Hello, bruvs. We're back with Some of Your Blood by Theodore, Sturgeon, and we're going to pick up on page 18. This George Smith was 23 years old at the time. He came from Kentucky, back in the hills. It was hills with woods and hills with farms, and every once in a while, these little towns that grow, like hair around something, crossroads, or a hole in the ground, like a mine. George came from a mine town. His mother and father came from the old country. They got married on this side. The father was working in Charleston, South Carolina when he met the mother. Probably the only reason he married her was she was the only girl he knew who could talk to him. There sure was nothing else worthwhile between them. Lonely, people get lonesome by themselves and then get hooked up and go off and be lonesome together. Yeah, Baba Heinz. 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 When they went to Kentucky so he could work in the mines, they were always set apart from everybody because they never did learn much English. I told you it's different. I don't know what the fuck that was, but that's why I didn't understand. I was like, what is this? Whatever it was he wanted, friends, let me read that again. When they went to Kentucky so he could work in the mines, they were always set apart from everybody because they never did learn much English. Whatever it was he wanted, friends or some place to belong or to be a big shot, he tried to find in a bottle. About the earliest thing George could remember was the father bellowing, drunk, and the mother screaming, and sometimes George screaming too. This was not the kind of memory like a thing happens and you remember it. This was no special one time, but like a colored light or a smell that you live in all the time. And hungry, practically all the time hungry, waiting for the father to come home. And sometimes he didn't, and sometimes he came late. And one single word to him about it, and he'd start slugging. You found out that when the mother yelled, you didn't feel hungry anymore. You found out that when the mother yelled, you didn't feel hungry anymore. I'm already hating the diction in this book. But all the same, it was nice, like the woods. You could walk in the woods and know where you were. First, a little way away from the house, then more finally, anywhere. The woods in the rain, in the snow. The woods, even when you were hungry. They couldn't hurt you the way you might get hurt at home. You might die in the woods or get killed. But the woods did not drink. The woods did not punch your mother in the face. You're always all right if you can get away into the woods. The woods are smooth, you might say. Towns are rough. You can lay up to the smooth woods and drink, but not towns, not people, all split halfway up and prickly. Also, you know where you stand in the woods. Animals now, they never stay mad. You don't know fucking cats, do you, buddy? You go to club a rabbit and you miss or hurt him and he gets away. He's not going to get sore about it. Maybe he's learned something and maybe he's more careful after that, more scared. But that's all. But if you hit out at a person, you never know what's going to come of it. From nothing at the way down. What? From nothing at all the way down to a stretch in the big house. Also, if a squirrel should see you cut a squirrel, it makes no never mind. Yeah, because squirrels hate each other. But if a person sees you cut a person, look out, even years later. When George was old enough to walk, he was old enough to be in the woods. No matter what happened, they were there waiting for him. From the time he was 11, there was something as good, even better, because the father's sister married a man who had a farm in the south part of Virginia. And although it was a long way away, he got to go there once in a while. And he found out years later that as farms go, that farm was pretty nothing, but at the time it was heaven, and for a while he lived there permanent. But that was later, after everyone died. Really not liking this book so far. The only really bad thing that ever happened to George in the woods was when he was 5 and he heard voices and crawled up a ridge and looked down and saw a guy giving it to a girl. It was not the first time he had seen it, but this was different from what happened at home because the girl was not crying. What he always remembered most about it was this girl's ankles. They were in the air, and every time the guy lunged, they wiggled like putty. George was watching this, not thinking one way or the other about it, when the other guy, there was two of them, taking this girl out in the woods, and the one was hanging around waiting while the second guy come up behind George and whooped him with a tree trunk. It was not a very big tree, and it was a long time dead and punky, or I guess George would be dead, but it hurt a lot and also scared him very bad. The guy running after him, whooping him 8 or 10 times till George got away. The brush being so thick around there and him so small, it was like clubbing a rabbit in brambles. You just can't do it. They say that these things affect you in late life, but it never bothered George. I mean, if it was supposed to scare him away from the woods, it did not. Even at 5 years old, George could understand that it was not the woods done it to him. Well, George had to go to school like everybody else, and that was where he first learned to let other people do the talking, because they all did it so easy. George could talk all right. His father made him do it, like in the store and all, but for a long time that hunky talk lay in his mouth and put a stink on every word that came out, and they laughed. Of course, after a while, George could talk American as good as anyone, but by that time the whole town was calling the father the town drunk, which he was, and any time George opened his mouth, he was like to get somebody's fist in it. And besides, the other kids in town used to run together all the time and go to each other's house, but nobody ever came to George's house because that was the one and only place they were scared of the father. And besides, the mother was always too sick and too tired. She had the arthritis at first in her hands, and it hurt her to do the wash and clean up, although she did as much as she could, and George helped her when nobody was watching. But one thing he would not do was hang out the clothes because the kids one time saw him do it. All this could have been worse because George just naturally grew big, 16 pounds when he was born. His mother used to say that's what gave her the arthritis. Then, from the time he was 8 or so, he really grew. And what with getting left back in school 2 years, he was always bigger than the kids he was thrown in with. By the time he was 12, he was 6 feet and 170 pounds. About the hunting, he was only about 7 or 8 when he started to get anywhere good at it. A slingshot was all right, but it took a while to get good at. Sometimes he could bean a rabbit with a club. You go out in the early morning when it is dark and be there at the edge of a field by the woods. When the first light comes, you have a club about 2 feet long and thick as your wrist. Green maple or hickory is best. Green, oh shit, because it is heavier that way. Pine is easier to cut, but it gets that pitch on your hands and clothes, and you cannot get it off. You get yourself set in thick brush, but near the edge, so your arm can swing clear. You stand with your arm back and the club resting in a tree crotch or some place that takes the weight of it, and you make up your mind you will be there without moving for a good long time. Pretty soon it begins to get light, and then the rabbits come out and eat the clover and timothy or whatever, and jump around and lay flat and rub their stomachs on the wet grass and all that. You pick out your rabbit and you make up your mind no other one will do. No matter how close another one comes, you leave it be. Pretty soon your rabbit will get just where you want him, and no matter what he does, roll over, wave his feet in the air, squat down, and nibble, sniff around another rabbit or whatever, you leave him be. But when he holds real still with all 4 feet on the ground and his chin down and his ears floppy, because when his ears are up, he's on lookout, then you let fly with your club. You want to scrape it away from the tree it is resting on because that makes a little sound. Just enough to bring him straight up on his haunches. He's sticking up out of the ground like a boundary peg. He's sticking up out of the ground like a boundary peg. You scrape your club off the tree and throw it all at once, no waiting, and you throw it low and fast, level with the ground, and no higher than the middle of his ears, and you throw it so it spins like an airplane propeller, but the airplane would have to be flying straight up. And you jump out and dive on that rabbit as soon as the club leaves your hand. Now, if the club hits right, it likes to tear his head plumb off, but if it knocks him going away, or if it gets him on the shoulder, it just like stuns him, and you better be there to grab him because he can be stunned and back on his feet and gone before you can blink. And if he is stunned, you can grab him and you take hold of his 2 hind legs in your left hand and pick him up. And when you do that to a rabbit, he straightens right out and throws his head back. So with your right hand, you chop straight down with the edge of it, and it breaks his neck. And he never moves, and blood runs out of his nose. But if you do that to a rat or a chuck or a coon or a squirrel, it will not straighten out and throw up its head, but instead it will curl up the other way and bite you. A squirrel can bite you 9 times before you can say ouch, and it has big yellow teeth an inch long. A rat that looks dead can get you if you hold it, even by the end of the tail. It can climb up that tail with its front feet, hand over hand, and cut you good before you get sense enough to let go. A squirrel bites straight down and leaves holes as big as his teeth, but a rat has a way of slashing. The hole is always much bigger than his teeth. You cannot figure out how he does it. A rat, if he is stunned, you want to grab the end of his tail and put your foot on it crosswise so the tail is under the arch of your foot, and then pull him up close to the shoe on the other side of the foot. That way you got him up tight where he can't but lash around some, and you have one hand free to club him or pick up a rock or your knife or stomp him with your other foot. A ground squirrel, which they call back east a chipmunk, is not worth your trouble. He has a tail comes off if you grab it. Well, it does not come off, but it skins off, and he gets away, and the rest of the tail shrivels up and drops off later. A chipmunk can bite worse than a rat, almost, and you would not believe anything that size could get his mouth open that wide. And once you got him, what have you got? He has no more juice than a stewed prune. A skunk is not worth your trouble, although they are easy to get because they are not afraid of nothing. A possum, all you have to do is lift him clear of the ground. A coon, you want to have a good club for, and you do not do nothing but club him and keep it up till you are sure. If he ever gets his back against a tree or a rock, and he is not dead yet, you will think somebody threw a buzzsaw at you spinning. George got a bobcat throwing a club once, but never again. All cats got the same taste. You breathe outward through your nose, and there's a taste there like cat pee smell for hours. You wouldn't believe it, but snakes taste all night. Maybe a little fishy, but there's nothing wrong with fish. The only thing it is not warm. The only thing is it is not warm. Birds are a waste of time. They are mostly feathers, except a couple of times George saw wild turkey, but he never did get near enough for even a big slingshot, except ducks. Ducks are fine. When George got a little older, 10 or 12, he got good with traps. He never could pay for steel traps, but he got so good with snares He did not need them. He could make a deadfall big enough to take a badger, and that is saying something because a badger can dig straight down through a black top road if he has to, unless your deadfall rock is big enough to kill him first. Crack. But this George was a strong boy. Your deadfall is nothing but a big, flat rock tipped up and propped on a stick. Some people tie a long string to the stick and wait and watch all day till something goes under the rock after the bait, but that is for Boy Scouts. George liked to prop up the rock and then whittled the stick almost through and tied the string to the notch. The string goes back under the rock under a peg sunk in the ground, and then back a ways and you tie your bait to it. A fox or a possum will grab hold and pull, and the stick breaks and down comes the rock. For rabbits, a carrot is the best bait because it is strong. For foxes or even a badger, sometimes rabbit meat is good, but don't ever use the kidneys or you will catch yourself some kind of damn cat. The nicest one of all is the figure 4, and George could make one faster than you can climb a yellow pine tree. All you do is find a nice young hardwood sapling, ash, or hickory or even birch if you got to. You pace off the right distance, depends on the tree, and dig a hole. Then you find a branch thick as your thumb with a good V crotch on it. You cut it through right under the V, and then you cut away one of the side branches, leaving a spur. What you have now is a bushy branch with a hook like. You turn this upside down and bury the branchy part, stomping it good and putting heavy rocks in the hole and maybe a log on top. So just the upside down hook is showing out of the ground. You cut a little notch in the shank part of the hook and whittle yourself a good strong double pointed peg to fit into that notch and cross to the tip of the hook. It looks like a figure 4. Now you pull down your sapling to bend almost double and tie a piece of twine near the top and the other end of the twine to the double pointed peg and set the peg in the hook to make the figure 4. Real easy, you let the bent tree pull up until the peg sets hard against the hook. Now, tied to this twine just above the figure 4 is another piece of twine, and tied to this is nothing in the world but a old number 1 guitar string, the kind with a little bitty brass stopper on one end, looks like a hollow brass barrel. You have the end of the guitar string pass through this to make a loop. You lay this loop around the bait and you tie the bait with a short cord to the double-ended peg in the figure 4. You shake fine dirt around all around until the loop is buried and the bait cord is buried, and then you go home. In the morning, you got yourself a rabbit or a chuck or maybe even a fox or badger, because first time he tugs on the bait, he pulls out the peg and that snaps upright, and the thin wire loop grabs him and hangs him up higher than Hammond. Or maybe it's a damn skunk, or maybe nothing but the chawed off foot of a fox, but usually it's something good. Oh, this George, he loved to hunt, but he never liked killing anything. He had no use for people who killed things just to be killing when the animals never did nothing to them. Nobody should kill another. Nobody should kill nothing they don't need to for some purpose. Like deer, one time George found a doe pressed flat against the ground by a fallen tree after a bad windstorm, and he worked all morning clearing it away with just a bitty hand axe and dragging up poles until he could lever it up high enough to let the deer out. The doe liked to died. The doe liked to died of fear. But this must be some kind of fucking hillbilly talk. The doe liked to died of fear, But George just laughed and went on working till he got it loose. George never did kill a deer. They are too big anyway. But this George, when he wasn't hunting or maybe fishing, he was laying around thinking about it. He sure did like to do it. Yeah, man, I thought this was going to be a decent book, but this is some butter churning bullshit. All right, I guess I'm stopping here because it doesn't really give a chapter ending, but I'm ending it to put myself out of misery. Fuck this book so far. All right, Bobs, that's all.